Over 200 movies narrowed down to just 10. Here are my top 10 favorites of 2012. In 2012, I saw between 200 and 250 new movies. That's new in theaters or new at festivals, not all of which I reviewed for one reason or another. Some of them come out in 2013, so I haven't gotten to them yet. But as far as wide releases go, I think I missed maybe a dozen at the most. And so that's really one movie a month. I'm extremely proud of myself for seeing this many movies, and a lot of people ask me, Eric, how the hell can you sit through so many movies? And some of them are 5 to 6 a day at festivals from like 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. And my answer is simple. I love movies. I absolutely love the experience of going into a theater and watching a movie. Even just watching them at home is good, but movies in general are something I'm very passionate about. I like making my own, and I like watching them. And this year, I saw a lot that I liked, so it was really, really difficult to go from whatever, 200 to 250 to 10. So, first things first, I have to say, I'm going to give some runner-ups after I do my top 10. I don't want to do them before because I don't want you guys to know what is not on my top 10 list. I want it to be surprising, which I'm sure it will be, but also maybe frustrating because some of them are ones you may not have seen or even heard of, but I see a lot of movies, what can I say? And the other important thing I have to stress before I get into any of this is that these are my favorite movies, the movies that I liked a lot. If you liked different movies, that's perfectly fine. If you didn't like any movies that I liked, that's also perfectly fine. These are not the greatest cinematic achievements of 2012. I do think that some of them have flaws. I don't think any of them are perfect, and they're just the movies I really loved, and I'd like to share those movies with you now with my top 10 favorite movies of 2012 list. But real quick before we get to that, one more hold up. I have to tell you two things about this list specifically. One is that when I tried to figure out what the list would be, I got it down to 50, then I got it down to maybe 20, and then I got it down to 10. So some of them were really close. And the other thing I have to say is that the list is not in a very strict, specific order, except 5 through 1 are the ones I saw the most in theaters. So technically, as far as enjoyment goes, maybe they would move around, but I decided it would be easier to base it on how many times I decided to see these movies in theaters. I enjoyed them enough to see them again. But let's get into my top 10 list, starting off with number 10, which, I think I've done this in the past, is a tie. I felt similarly about both of these movies, so I decided to just make it a tie. The Perks of Being a Wallflower and Silver Linings Playbook. I loved both of these movies. They are a bit similar in a way, in my eyes at least, as far as the tone goes and as far as the subject matter goes, but both movies left me leaving the theater with a smile on my face. Maybe I shed a tear or two, so I couldn't decide between them. I decided, let's just make it a tie. They are my number 10, technically. Not 10 and 11. They're both 10. At number 9, I've got Beasts of the Southern Wild. Now, this is where I have to remind you that the movies could move around on the list because I feel like putting it at number 9 makes it seem like I had to think about it, but this was always going to be on my top 10. I loved it ever since I saw it at the 2012 Sundance Film Festival. Not only is it a beautiful film as far as the cinematography goes and the locations, but it is incredibly acted, especially Quvenzhané Wallis, the little girl, blew my mind. She was unbelievable. The story is interesting and the setting is very rich and unique. You feel like you are right there with them, and it's a very powerful movie. It feels very powerful, and aside from a plotline that I didn't fully connect with, I thought it was fantastic, and I was completely immersed when I was watching it. I loved it. Now, number 8 and number 7 are two movies that I loved when I saw them, but unfortunately haven't been able to watch since, so I couldn't confirm, you know, if they were my number 2 and number 3, really. So I decided to just keep them relatively early in the list. Number 8 is Robot and Frank. This movie not only touched me when I saw it at the Sundance Film Festival, I was emotional and I was completely invested in it, but I thought it was really, really clever and unique. The story of the robot helping the old jewel thief, and it was such a cool concept, done very well. I really liked the tone of the movie, kind of had a sterile, futuristic tone to it without being too overbearing. It felt grounded in reality. But not only that, I thought the acting was great. Frank Langella blows it out of the park. He was fantastic. And the rest of the cast was great too. Overall, this was a really, really well done movie that I adored and have not stopped thinking about. I can't wait to see it again. Number 7 is Funeral Kings. This is the same thing. I haven't been able to see it since, but I loved it when I saw it many months ago at the 2012 South by Southwest Film Festival. It was so funny and so real. The kids felt so real and so natural. They were excellent. And I loved that it was dramatic too. It wasn't just funny, and it didn't feel forced, because a lot of times in comedies when they try to throw in the drama aspect of it, it feels a little forced or out of place. But this felt so right. The movie just felt real. Like I said, it feels like it was just a real thing that happened. And so, for that reason, and for the fact that I was cracking up laughing throughout, and the music is awesome, this is definitely one of my favorites of 2012. At number 6, I've got the only truly wacky and maybe not for everybody movie on the list, Holy Motors. This movie, wow. I recently watched it, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. I keep realizing different things every day as I think about it, and that is why I loved it. Holy Motors is not just a movie, it is an experience. When you start watching it, the experience begins because you are automatically going to start thinking about it after it's over, within the first few minutes. It's one of those movies that you have to really kind of think about and interpret, but personally, I think even if you don't interpret it at all, you can still enjoy it, because visually, it's amazing to see all these different scenes, and the main actor in all these different parts, playing these different characters, and so while I don't completely understand everything I saw, it really doesn't matter, because this movie really made me think a lot, and I loved it while I was watching it, and I cannot wait to watch it again. Now we are up to the top 5. As I said, these are movies that I saw more than once. I decided that would be an easier way to figure out the list, because it was pretty tough up until I decided that. Let's start off with number 5, 21 Jump Street. I think a lot of people forgot about this movie, or maybe they just didn't like it as much as I did, but this was probably my favorite comedy of 2012. Not only did I completely connect with a lot of the subtle humor that many other people in the theater didn't laugh at, and I was crying laughing at, but it actually has some heart to it, and it is really, really self-aware. It knows it's a remake or a reimagining, a reboot, whatever you want to call it, of the TV show 21 Jump Street, but it plays some great homage to the show, and it makes fun of itself, and the duo that is Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum, they were perfect together. All of this came together to make definitely my favorite comedy of 2012. I couldn't stop laughing throughout, and every time I think about it, and every time I've watched it since, which has been multiple times in theaters, on demand, on DVD, whatever, I laugh just as hard every single time. Number 4 is The Cabin in the Woods. I was looking forward to this movie for years. And so I was so excited to finally see it at the 2012 South by Southwest Film Festival, and I've seen it many times since, in theaters, on demand, on DVD, whatever. I don't remember where I saw it, but multiple times, and I enjoy it just as much, if not more, every time, because knowing what's coming is just as fun as not knowing what's coming the first time around. And while it wasn't exactly what I was expecting, and there were some problems I had with it, I think it is one of the most interesting and clever and unique movies, let alone horror movies, just movies in general, that I've seen in a long time, and I loved how it deconstructed the horror genre, and it was so true and so accurate. It's hard to watch horror movies now because it's really kind of just blasted the whole thing open. It's not as scary as it is funny, but it is still a comedy horror movie, and I thought it did a perfect job blending the two, and so for that reason, Cabin in the Woods is solidified as one of my favorite movies of 2012. Now we are at the top 3. This is where things get serious, folks, so let's start off with a serious movie. Number 3, Les Miserables. I was looking forward to Les Mis because I know the musical, I know all the songs, mostly word for word, and when I saw the cast list for this thing, I knew it was going to be incredible, and it is. I absolutely loved Les Mis. I don't think it's perfect, and that's why I like it. I actually like it for its flaws, such as the camera being so close to the actors sometimes that you can see the shadow of the camera. As bad as that is, I guess you could say, that is what I like because it's such a don't care attitude, and they had a lot of balls to do it that way. There are a lot of things in this movie that I thought were very gutsy and very different, and so because of the bravery, almost you could say, as far as the filmmaking goes, and for some of the actors who I don't know are necessarily singers, I really, really appreciated and loved and was very emotionally invested in. Man, I cried, I'll tell you that. Les Miserables. Now, number 2 may potentially come as a surprise considering the rest of the list once it's all said and done, but my number 2 is The Avengers. Now, this is extremely important. Back off. It is not my second favorite movie of the year, I don't think, but I saw it the second most time in theaters, I guess, and so, once again, I decided that was the easiest way to put the top 5, and I saw it maybe 3 or 4 times in theaters. I loved it. I loved it the first time I saw it. It was exactly what I wanted. It was a comic book movie. It didn't take itself too seriously, not that that would be a problem if it did, and they did it well, but the problems I have with it are easy to push to the side because of the tone and the subject matter and just what it is. You know, it wasn't trying to be a perfect, incredible, groundbreaking cinematic achievement. It was trying to be the freaking Avengers, and that it was. I think what also adds to how much I love it is the fact that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been very impressive in how they've been setting it up with Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, all the movies leading up to this one, and then they all came together, so it's not just about the movie itself, it's about everything that surrounds it, and once again, these are my favorite movies, that's why it's one of my favorites, and once again, I don't know about number 2 if we go by how great the movies were to me or how much I enjoyed them, but I saw it a lot of times in theaters and I loved it every time. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are up to my number 1 favorite movie of 2012. This is the big one, and I have to say, it's exciting because ever since I first saw it, it's really been my number 1 on the list. Hasn't changed. Nothing beat it for me. It's a tiny little movie. It's a simple movie that definitely has its flaws. Safety not guaranteed. I loved this movie so much. It made me emotional, it made me laugh, and it's got time travel. What the hell more could you want? Mark Duplass gave one of my favorite performances of 2012. The character was great and he portrayed it perfectly. I thought Aubrey Plaza and the rest of the cast was great as well, but he blew me away, and there's this one moment in the movie where a realization sets in with him and it makes me cry every time. The funny parts get me every time, the ending gets me every time, and I've watched it more times than any movie. I saw it more times than any other movie in theaters this year. I've watched it on DVD multiple times. It never gets old for me. I loved Safety Not Guaranteed so freaking much. Once again, these are my personal favorite movies of 2012. If you're sitting here thinking, not only did he pick this rinky-dink little movie, Safety Not Guaranteed, for number 1, but The Dark Knight Rises didn't make the list. Blasphemy. Burn him at the stake. Chill out. As I said, I'm going to tell you my runner-ups. I wrote them down in a neat little list in alphabetical order, so don't get too excited. Like I said, it was really, really difficult to narrow down from over 200 movies to 10 or 11, if you count that 10 is technically 2 movies. And so I decided I would tell you some other ones that were pretty close to the list. If I had seen less movies, they might have made the list. The Amazing Spider-Man, Arbitrage, Argo, Cloud Atlas, The Dark Knight Rises, Django Unchained, Excision, For a Good Time Call, Frankenweenie, Hitchcock, The Hobbit, Killer Joe, Life of Pi, Looper, Moonrise Kingdom, The Pact, Prometheus, Ruby Sparks, Seven Psychopaths, Sinister, Ted, and Wreck-It Ralph. Obviously, I'm forgetting something, I know it, but also a couple of documentaries I liked, Indie Game the Movie and Room 237. There are more, but once again, I can't think of everything. I saw a lot of damn movies. And a couple of foreign films, Amour, The Untouchables, The Raid Redemption, and Sleep Tight. So, I have to be fair, those were all pretty damn close, and once again, if I hadn't seen as many movies as I did, any of those could have made the list because I might not have seen ones that did make the list. And just because it didn't make the list doesn't mean I didn't love it, or at least really like it. In some cases, those are movies I really liked. Some cases, they are movies that I really loved. But I'm happy with my list. I'm satisfied with it. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. It would be in the runner-ups, though. Don't worry. I was careful. I definitely didn't miss anything for the top 10 list. But there you have it. It was extremely difficult to come up with this thing, although, like I said, my number 1 never changed. Let me know what you think of this list. Are you frustrated that you only know half of them? Are you frustrated that your favorite movies aren't on the list? Or are you happy with it? Maybe you like all these movies, too. If you are frustrated that you haven't seen half of these, I'd like to point out that aside from maybe 2 of them, all of these are available to watch on demand on iTunes or by other means, if you catch my drift. Whatever you want to do, that's up to you. So in the past, you might have been able to say, well, we can't even watch these damn movies, Eric. This list is bogus. But you now have no excuse. Please check out any movies you haven't seen. I'd love to know what you think of them. And also, if you want to know all of my thoughts about all of these movies in a little more depth, all of the reviews are linked down in the info. Once again, please let me know what you thought of my list. Let me know what your list is. I'm curious to see what you guys thought of all the movies this year. I think it was a pretty good year. Not the best year in recent memory, but pretty damn good. I'm really excited to see what 2013 brings as far as movies go. Thank you very much for watching, and that's pretty much it.